Hi guys, this is Steve here, and I thought I'd do a quick video on how to remotely mount a Tortoise switch machine because I needed to relocate it. As you can see, I'm putting in a turnout in this location here, and underneath the turnout at this point I have an old part of the shelf. It was where I was originally going to put the shelf, but now I'm bringing it out a little further. So there's no room for the Tortoise in this area where I want to put the turnout. So I'm going to be bringing the Tortoise out to this area, which is closer to the edge here on the benchwork. Now this is a great application for anywhere you have some mounting cross beams or something and you need to move the Tortoise. So I'm going to be moving the hole out to this location. It's only about 4 inches from where the Tortoise is, but I want from where the turnout is. But I want to be able to mount the Tortoise under this location and be able to throw the turnout over here. So what I'm going to be explaining is basically what I've done in this location. Now, these ones are manually operated. Okay, they're Pico switches, so they have a center spring to hold them in place. Now the other turnout is off the main line, so I want to operate those with Tortoises. This is just assigning at this location. But what I've done is use some 3/32 tubing, aluminum tubing, and some 0.047 piano wire, and all I've done is create a little L. I've cut a channel into the benchwork with my miter saw prior to putting the track in. The miter saw has a blade that's 1/8 inch wide, and so I've cut a groove in it here, and then I've mounted the aluminum tube in the hole. Just put a simple L bend into the piano wire and use some caulking to hold that into the hole. And what that has done is bring the control out to in front of the fascia. The fascia is going to be mounted here. We'll put a knob on the end of this once I put the fascia in. Just drill a hole and then mount a knob on the end of this. And you can see it now brings the operation of the turnout out in front of the fascia, so you don't have to reach into the layout in order to get at the switches or the turnouts. That's even a bigger help in this location where they're located about 12 inches back. I can just throw the turnouts from the edge up here. And you can see I've extended the groove from the benchwork out through the scenery. This will later be covered with some ground foam and so forth. But back to this application, you can save yourself a little bit of money from the aluminum tubes by using stir sticks. You know, I just got these at McDonald's or something, and the 047 piano wire actually slides very nicely through the stir stick. So that's a way of saving a little bit of cash there. But I'll come back after cutting the groove in the benchwork and then show how it's mounted. Okay, welcome back. I'm in my garage now, and as you can see, I have cut the groove into the benchwork. I was able to remove this complete section of shelf from the layout. I didn't have it fastened in place. I just have it, it was held in place by some biscuits that I could see in the end of the benchwork there, and was just sitting on that smaller shelf. Now eventually it'll be permanently mounted. Of course, I'm just going to put some screws in it from the top into that smaller shelf, and that should hold it in place. Anyways, I've taken my electric chop saw or miter saw and put the piece of plywood on the miter saw, lined up the holes, the two center lines where I wanted to mount the Tortoise and the switch, and I've cut a groove. It's only about, I would say, maybe a 1/4 inch deep maximum. You only need about 1/8, 3/16 inch deep in the benchwork in order to mount the 3/32 inch tubing. Now this is the tubing. I've already cut that to length. I measured the distance from the center line here to the edge of the hole here, which is about 3 7/8, and I've cut the aluminum tubing. I have this, sorry about that, I have this little tube cutter which I picked up at a recent train show from the tool man. It's great for really small tubing. It's just like your pipe cutter that you would use on plumbing. Anyway, so I cut this tube and I've bent the piano wire. You can see I put the L band into it, and now that's going to go right on the center line where the track is going to be, and over here it overhangs the hole a little bit, and I'm going to put another 90-degree bend around the center of this hole here, and then we'll do that and I'll come back in a second. Okay, so I've bent my wire here. You can see, hopefully you can see that all right. I've just put another 90-degree bend right here, and I've looped it around using a couple pair of needle nose pliers. These ones are great for doing a strong 90-degree bend, but then for this little loop in there I needed the smaller needle nose pliers. But I've just put a loop in there, and then I measured the center from this center line to the center of this hole, and that's the distance that I have here on my wire. Now the key, before you bend this, you got to remember to put the piece of tubing on there, because once you get the two bends, you're never going to get the tubing on there. So that's going to sit right in this groove. Okay, the tubing is going to sit right in there. I'm going to take some caulking. This part of it is going to stick up right over top of the center line, and then that loop is going down through the hole. Now I'm going to be able to, once I glue that in place, I'm going to be able to caulk this over, or just put a piece of tape over it before I put the other track work in there, because I have another row of track running in here. Actually, I don't really have to tape it over, but if I was doing any scenery work or something, and I'm going to tape this hole over, so you're not even going to see that anymore. All you're going to have is this pin sticking up and the Tortoise underneath operating this lever here, and it's going to be throwing the throw bar. And for the Tortoise, I've mounted it on this little bracket, and I'm going to be I just made this bracket out of a piece of 1x4. I've cut a groove into it and put a couple L brackets on the side, and that's going to be mounted up underneath so that it's in a horizontal orientation. And then once the throw bar goes, you'll see it. It's throwing that. It's going to mount right into there, and it's going to throw this back and forth as that moves back and forth there. So next episode I'll flip this over and mount this on, and then we'll take another look at it. Okay, I've got it mounted now on the board. You can see I've also put in a slight wire across the opening of the mouth there. That's to keep the loop. This is the loop section here. It wanted to slide down the throw bar a little bit, so by putting that wire there, it stays straight up and down when it's moving back and forth. And also you might notice I've replaced the throw bar with a piece of 047 wire. It's much thicker than the one that comes with the actual Tortoise. That was a little bit too weak, so this one provides much more throw strength. You can see I'll manually operate the Tortoise here, and that's sliding back and forth, and it moves quite nicely. You can see I've just held it in place with the two little L brackets there. And then on this side I have it mounted to the 1x4, and The wires go to a small bus that I have there, and there's this traditionally mounted Tortoise on this side. The two will work in tandem together, so once I get them wired up, both of them will operate at the same time. Okay, so I've put the board or the piece of benchwork back in place, and as you can see, there's the hole and the throw bar in there. Now I had to redo the throw bar because the first one, when I glued it in place, I got a little touch of glue on the rod itself, and that was binding in the hole, and so consequently it wasn't working properly, so I had to make a whole new throw bar. So be very careful where you glue. I was using some Walther's glue in the groove there to hold it in place, and I got a little bit too much, and it got some on the actual wire, and that just gummed it all up. So that's a word of caution, but here I'm going to manually throw the bar again from underneath, and you can see it throw the switch in there. And then last step, once I mount the cork underneath here and get this to the final height, I'll cut off the top of that of this wire to the correct height, and it should be all good. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any questions, just email them back to me on YouTube.